Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an ancient story, but not just as a myth. We're going to treat it as a really powerful and honestly timeless case study in modern leadership and how you can actually change an organization from the inside out. All right, let's just jump right in with the big question that's going to frame this whole thing. We're going to look at how this one leader got stuck in a totally impossible situation and how his final decision gives us a blueprint for anyone, really, who's trying to fix a toxic system. And that could be anything, right? A company, a community, maybe even a family. So, to really get a grip on the massive challenge facing our leader, this guy, King Thoas, we first have to understand the toxic, totally locked in system he inherited. In organizational theory, they actually have a name for this kind of setup, the House of Tantalus. And what's so fascinating here is how this whole idea reframes the myth. See, the curse we're talking about, it's not some supernatural hocus pocus. No, it's actually a perfect metaphor for a deeply dysfunctional organization. You know the type, where the past just dictates everything, and trying to do something new feels completely impossible. Okay, so this curse, it really breaks down into three key parts. First, you've got this cycle of what's called reciprocal violence. Basically, every action demands a counteraction, like a constant state of retaliation. Then, there's this culture of inherited guilt. This is huge. It means the mistakes of past leaders become these unwritten rules for today's leaders, completely paralyzing them from making any new decisions. And all of this leads to the final piece, what the source material calls ontological isolation. The leader becomes so cut off, so alienated, not just from their own people, but from their own humanity. It's described as a kind of living death. Really heavy stuff. All right, let's look at how King Thoas first tried to deal with this mess. I mean, like a lot of leaders stuck in a high-pressure situation, he just fell back on what he knew. And what he knew was tradition and force. So before he had this big transformation, his main tool was just enforcing the old rules, super rigidly. And you have to understand, he wasn't necessarily this evil guy. He was just using the established playbook, which, yes, included the brutal custom of human sacrifice, because he truly believed it was the only thing holding his kingdom together. But, and this is the critical part, this is where it all falls apart for him. When his personal desires get shot down by the priestess, Iphigenia, his whole rulebook just goes out the window. He totally regresses into what the source calls an state of pure violence. And this is such a classic leadership failure, right? When the rules don't get you what you want, you just default to brute force. It's like a manager whose team misses a target, and instead of trying to inspire them, they just start making threats. And this right here just lays out the deadlock perfectly. It's a total clash of worldviews. On one side, you've got King Thoas with his list of state-sanctioned rights, his absolute legal authority, his duty to enforce these old bloody customs, and, his personal right to get revenge. But then on the other side, Iphigenia comes in with a completely different playbook. She's talking about the law of mercy, about the idea that a just power should be good, and she's appealing to their shared humanity. Two totally different languages. So the big question is, if brute force doesn't work, what on earth can break a cycle like this? Well, the answer isn't a bigger army or some clever political trick. It comes from something completely unexpected. A radical intervention, a strategy of just disruptive honesty. Iphigenia's approach is a total 180 from the typical executive mindset, right? The kind of pragmatic, even Machiavellian thinking that says the ends justify the means. I mean, her advisors are literally telling her to lie, to steal, to do whatever it takes to survive. But she proposes something else entirely. A path that isn't built on sneaky strategy, but on the radical power of telling the truth. And this is really her core belief, the whole foundation of her strategy. She basically argues that radical honesty, what the source calls human communication, can actually shatter a system that brute force can only kind of dent. She truly believes that integrity itself can be a weapon. So this is the moment. This is the test of the lie. She makes the unbelievable decision to use what's called sacred candor. Instead of lying to the king to save herself, she walks right up to him and tells him the entire escape plan. Can you imagine? She completely bypasses all his legal defenses, all his kingly authority, and speaks directly to a man-to-woman. She literally places her life and everyone else's right in his hands. I mean, this shocking act of honesty completely backs the king into a corner that he cannot fight his way out of. It creates this massive, pivotal moment of decision. It's what you'd call a strategic inflection point, not just for his kingdom, but for his own soul. And her action, it forces everyone in the story, and us, really, to confront this fundamental question, and it is so relevant today. Do you have to compromise your integrity? Do you have to, soil your soul just to make it in a hostile environment? Or is there another way? So now, King Thoas has this ultimate choice, and it's crystal clear. He can follow fate, that's the predetermined path, the same old cycle of vengeance that his entire culture is built on, or he can make a new choice. He can forge his own path, one of ethics and mercy. He can actually choose to give up his legal right to vengeance in favor of a human relationship. And his decision, the one that finally breaks this ancient curse, it all comes down to a single, transformative word. That one word is farewell. And when he says it, he's doing so much more than just saying goodbye. He is actively, consciously relinquishing his legal right to get revenge. He is ending the cycle of blood debts for good. And get this, not because some god told him to, but because a human being made a choice. This is it. This is the exact moment of his transformation. He makes the choice to stop being what the text calls a barbarian leader, someone ruled by rigid, inhuman rituals, and to become a human leader, one who is guided by compassion and real moral clarity. So what can we take away from all this? Well, it's actually a pretty clear blueprint for anyone trying to transform a toxic culture. First key, truth and integrity can be way more powerful than brute force. Second, real, lasting change happens when you start prioritizing human connection over just sticking to the old, rigid rules. And finally, achieving that kind of moral clarity, that's what truly ends a leader's isolation and brings them and their organization some real peace. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The lesson from King Thoas, it isn't just about some ancient king from a myth. It's about the choices we all face every day. It teaches us that sometimes the single most powerful act of leadership isn't issuing a command or winning a fight, but having the courage to break a destructive cycle by simply choosing humanity over protocol and saying farewell.